and you'll hear a notification too. All right, well, I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar hosted by the Social Finance Topic Interest Group of the American Evaluation Association. My name is Miriam Tardif-Douglan. I'm with the North Carolina Healthcare Foundation, and I'm also serving as the webinar chair of the Social Finance Topic Interest Group. As Liz said, please introduce yourselves in the chat and especially let us know if you are a new member of this TAG or not a TAG or not a member, or whether this is the first time you've attended one of our webinar or other events. For those of you that are not familiar, the American Evaluation Association is a professional association of evaluators devoted to the application and exploration of evaluation as a profession. AEA has approximately 6,000 members, representing 50 states, all 50 states in the United States, and more than 80 foreign countries. You can learn more about the American Evaluation Association at the eval.org website, which I will post in the chat. And just for more background on the social finance group, we're called the SIF TAG for short. We're a group of AEA members who are interested in the topic of social impact measurement and management, and also are interested in exploring the interplay between the social and the financial return on investment. We come from many backgrounds, from evaluators to evaluation commissioners, investors to investees. Membership in our TAG means that you want to learn more about evaluating the social impact of organizations that are aiming to produce both a social and a financial return, whether you're at the forefront of this work or just learning about it. We're always welcoming new members. So learn more about the TAG, the SIF TAG, at the link I'm putting in the chat also. And all our webinars are recorded, as this one will be, as I mentioned, and you can find them on our website. I believe we also have a YouTube channel that you can go to. I will put the link to that in the chat once I can get to that. Each webinar in our 2026 series touches on the 2026 AEA conference theme, which this year is Evaluation Across Boundaries. We have a very exciting webinar today. It will give attendees a primer on evaluation within the social finance sector. Without further ado, I'll introduce today's speaker. We're very lucky to have Elizabeth McGuinness with us to share key content from the social finance primer, which I will also put a link to in the chat. You're going to be overwhelmed with links. Just some background on Liz. She's a seasoned professional with a wealth of experience in international inclusive finance, women's economic empowerment, and financial literacy. Most recently, Liz served as the Senior Director of Monitoring, Evaluation, and Learning at the Center for Financial Inclusion. As an independent consultant, Liz evaluated financial inclusion programs targeted at women and smallholder farmers. She developed M&E frameworks for national financial literacy strategies and facilitated the development of theories of change for the inclusive finance space as a whole, as well as for individual clients. Liz is pursuing currently opportunities in the IMM space, as well as particularly in gender lens investing. Liz is going to speak for about 30 to 45 minutes and then present questions for the audience. Please save your questions for the end or put them in the chat to be addressed at the end. All right, that's it from me. Liz, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Miriam. Welcome everyone, especially the new people. We're here today to discuss the Social Finance Primer, which was published by this TIG in early 2024. The Social Finance TIG, originally called the Social Impact Measurement TIG, was established in 2016 for AEA members interested in the topic of social impact. Our purpose is to contribute to greater awareness and knowledge sharing among the evaluation sector and market actors interested in evaluating the impact of social returns of investments that also aim to have a financial return. The purpose is also to develop and adapt evaluation tools, methods, and approaches to examine the social impacts of innovative finance and market-based models, and also to strengthen the evaluation capacity of individuals and organizations to enable the assessment and evaluation of social impact for this this emerging and growing area. I have to say in advance that all week I've been feeling kind of coming down with a cold. So if you see me suddenly disappear and go mute, I might be sneezing. So I apologize in advance, just to let you know. In 2023, when Jill Turnauer and I started to write the primer on impact measurement and management in the social finance space, it was intended to be a living document. So our objective today is to summarize the key points of the primer. And since this is a quickly moving field, our second objective is to obtain your feedback on whether and how we should update the primer this year. Over the next 30 minutes or so, we'll see how the primer answers questions 1 to 7, and then we will open the floor to discuss the last question. So what is social finance? Also, it's also called impact investing, which you may have heard it in those terms. The motivation behind the primer was to educate AAMA members about social finance and the role of measurement and evaluation in this space. The target audience for the primer is evaluators who are new to social finance. In addition to the material to be presented today, the primer contains many links to resources where you can learn more on this topic. And I'm sorry, I misspoke at the beginning. Now we're going to speak about what is social finance and impact investing. Okay. There's a couple of different definitions, and we like the definition provided by the Global Impact Investing Network, or the GIN. Impact investing are investments made to generate measurable social and environmental impact, as well as a financial return. And you'll see that most of the literature mentions both social and environmental impacts, though I may not always say environmental because it's, just as a shortcut, we'll just say social. So impact investing intentionally addresses global challenges such as renewable energy, affordable housing, healthcare, across various asset classes. And by asset classes, I mean like equity, bonds, etc. Key aspects of impact investing include intentionality. The core intent is to create positive, non-financial impact. And measurement, which is impact. Impact is tracked and reported using evidence and data. Another key aspect is financial returns that can range from below market, like closer to philanthropy, or concessional, charging concessional, or what we call concessional rates, to market rate financial returns. Another characteristic is asset diversification. Investments are made in both emerging and developed markets across private equity, venture capital, and debt. It's commonly confused with ESG, environmental, social, and governance criteria, or socially responsible investing, such as avoiding investments in defense or tobacco firms. Social finance is distinguished by its proactive, targeted pursuit of specific positive outcomes rather than avoiding investment in bad companies, for example. So let's talk about what the social finance ecosystem looks like for a minute. So the social finance ecosystem shown here using a market systems development configuration in order to simplify a complicated picture starts with the main institutional types aligned along an impact investing chain, which you'll see in the center going horizontally. The three main actors include investors, investees, and intermediaries. Impact investors or providers of capital are also known as asset owners or asset managers. These provide capital, either debt or equity, with the aims of generating measurable social impacts and a financial return. Investors can include enterprises, institutional investors, insurance companies, non-governmental organizations, religious institutions, foundations, even individual investors. bilateral development finance institutions like the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation or the European Investment Bank, and multilateral financial institutions such as the International Finance Corporation are specialized development banks or subsidiaries set up to support private sector development in developing countries. These are all part of the set of investors that we see in this space. Impact investees are the actors receiving capital. These are mission-driven organizations, for-profit, nonprofit, or hybrid organizations with a market-based strategy. They receive investment capital with the explicit purpose of achieving both financial returns and measurable mission-aligned social impact, social outcomes. And an easy example of this would be, microfinance banks that maybe have been grew up early in the early days by nonprofits, but are now for-profit banks, and they receive investments from impact investors, either debt or equity, and they're still aligned. They're still trying to get that social impact by reaching people that are unbanked. Intermediaries provide or facilitate services and products that link providers of capital with investees. And there are generally two kinds that we find. There's financial intermediaries, which are institutions used to channel the capital between the investor and the investee. They may invest directly or through aggregated structures such as mutual funds. These institutions include commercial banks, investment banks, private equity funds, venture capital funds, etc. There's also advisor intermediaries or transactions advisors that help reduce transaction costs and information barriers versus via a network of in-house and external specialists. They bridge the gap between investor and investee, helping to structure and close deals between them. Their services include preparing financial, marketing, and legal documents, conducting due diligence, and more. In the lower outer ring, we have like the rules of the system. And in this case, the one type of institution we're interested in are regulators. And they're the most important actors here. And these are independent government agencies whose primary purpose is to enforce the law against market manipulation. In the US, the example is the Securities and Exchange Commission, or the SEC. And in Europe, they have the European Commission. There's also quasi-public agencies like, can people not see my slides?
I thought people could, because I can, but it sounds like one of our participants can't see the slides, so I want to make sure that that's not the case for others.
Okay.
If
Let
anyone
me,
can't see the slides, please let us know.
okay. So also there's the International Financial Standards Board, which is not, part of a single government, but is also a regulator in this space. At the top of our diagram is the supporting function space. And these include a variety of support organizations ranging from multilateral organizations that have set impact management and measurement standards, and membership organizations providing resources and tools to philanthropic and academic institutions who conduct research and publish reports. These organizations play a critical role in setting standards, convening impact investors, providing consulting support, conducting research, and verifying impact. There's a lot of examples in this space. There are the standard setters, which include the UNDP, or the United Nations Development Program, and the OECD. Collaborations aimed at harmonizing the field include the Impact Management Project, which was co-chaired by the OECD, the United Nations. I would like to hold the questions till the end, but people are welcome to put their questions in the chat now so that in case you don't want to lose your idea, but I'd rather just keep going to the end and then I'll take all the questions. Thanks. The United Nations Environmental Program and Impact Frontiers. There's membership associations like the Global Impact Investing Network or the Aspen Network of Development Entrepreneurs. There's foundations such as the Rockefeller Foundation, which has been a pioneer in this space. Social impact accelerators such as the Miller Center for Social Entrepreneurship. Professional firms like Bridgespan or Deloitte, and solution providers like 60 decibels. So, there's a lot of different organizations in this space, and it's quite a complicated area. And roles for evaluators can be found in different parts of the ecosystem, of course, starting with the support organizations who have developed the measurement frameworks, but also there's roles for evaluators with investees, investors, and other intermediaries. Next, we're going to talk about frameworks that are used in this space. And the field has, let's see, it's important. The field has several different frameworks, and it's also important to understand that the social impact measurement field has its own lexicon that does not always align with the terminology used by evaluators. Social impact measurement is also known as impact management and measurement, whereas in the nonprofit and global development sectors, we're used to using the terms monitoring and evaluation for similar activities. In impact investing, the term impact is used liberally and pertains to any change in social or environmental conditions resulting from impact investments. In fact, people use the term impact as it's used in general speech in these often in this space. Links to helpful glossaries to sort of translate between the IMM space and the traditional evaluation space are provided in the primer. But the GIN defines impact measurement and management as identifying and considering the positive and negative effects of one's business actions on people and the planet, and then figuring out ways to mitigate the negative outcomes and maximize the positive to be in alignment with one's goals. The emphasis here is weighted more on towards management than on measurement. And while there are generally accepted tools for measuring financial return, there are clearer standards, and there are clearer standards for capturing environmental outcomes or certain environmental outcomes. The methods and approaches for documenting and evaluating social outcomes affiliated with these investments is still a work in progress. Among the standards and frameworks and principles are these, and there may be others, in fact, and we'll address two of these in more detail, starting with the 9 operating principles for impact measurement. These operating principles were developed in 2019 by the IFC with other stakeholders. This framework is to ensure that impact considerations are integrated while investment decisions are being made. So there's 8 principles that are applied during the 4 stages of an investment life cycle. And the investment life cycle includes strategic intent, origination and structuring, portfolio management, and impact as exit. So let's see. So the first, I'll go through this one in more detail. The first principle is to define strategic impact objectives consistent with the investment strategy, manage strategic impact on a portfolio basis rather than on a project basis. Under origination and structuring, the task is to establish managers' contribution to the achievement of impact, assess the expected impact of each investment based on a systematic approach. You'll note that this is sort of a prospective approach. That's something different than we've done in traditional evaluation. We maybe state where we think impacts are going to happen, but we don't actually assess that particular impact totally in advance. And then assess, address, monitor, and manage potential negative impacts of each investment. Under portfolio management, tasks include monitoring the progress of each investment in achieving impact against expectations and responding appropriately. And at the end, it's important to conduct exits, considering the effect on sustained impact. Finally, The last step is to review, document, and improve decisions and processes based on the achievement of impact and lessons learned. Um, but after this, there's a ninth principle, and that's about independent verification. The public disclosure of results in alignment with the impact principles and the regular independent verification of this alignment helps build transparency and credibility through independent verification. This is an important step that we don't often see in regular evaluation. Another framework that's often used is a decision-making framework called the 5 Dimensions of Impact, which was developed by UNDP and possibly others. And it's intended to help users integrate impact management into their activities, but here with a focus on attaining the social development goals, the SDGs. These UNDP defined IMM as the practices that help your organization to make informed decisions about how to improve the well-being of people and the planet that you influence. The five dimensions are best understood as a planning tool. You start by defining what outcomes do you want to achieve, and then move on to the who. Who will be experiencing this outcome, or these underserved populations? Then you want to think about how much change are you hoping to achieve? What's the scale, depth, and duration of that change? And then you want to look at your expected contribution. Are you actually providing some additionality rather than just substitute for some other benefit that some other group has achieved? And then finally, you want to look at the risks. Oh, what is the risk that the impact will not happen? The SDG Impact Initiative, which was involved with these, continued and later on developed SDG impact standards for enterprises, bond issuers, and private equity funds. These are internal decision-making standards to help users integrate impact on the SDGs into strategy, management approach, transparency, and governance practices. So these are very useful tools if you're interested in doing this kind of work. There's a few other measurement approaches that we discuss in the primer, and of these, over 4 of them. In IMM, the term theory of change has been replaced with the terms theory of value creation or impact thesis. In IMM, these are grounded in knowledge, assumptions, and evidence, but are not applied in the same way as in the public or nonprofit sectors. Instead, they serve as a conceptual blueprint for how an investment is expected or intended to achieve its intended impacts. That is, impact is assessed prospectively, as I mentioned earlier. Lean data approaches are important in IMM. 60 Decibels is one vendor who uses such approaches to measure impact. They often rely on customers' or beneficiaries' self-assessment of the outcomes they've experienced. Lean data approaches focus on speed, repeatability, and comparability using low-cost methods at different points in time. And there's really less focus on impact measurement as evaluators understand it. For example, the 60 Decibels impact reports on microfinance organizations. There's also examples of developmental evaluation being used to assess the impact of social finance. I mean, this is a very good method to work with perhaps innovative solutions to social problems that are maybe experimenting and changing quickly, which often impact investments are focused on. Finally, we get to the GIN's IRIS Plus metrics. These provide standard measures or indicators for tracking a wide variety of social investments, and these are very widely used. I'll speak about them in more detail. The GIN's aim has been to standardize IMM across the industry, across sectors, the SDGs, and other dimensions. To support this standardization, they developed the IRIS Plus, which involves catalogs or databases or a database of metrics and curated indicators organized across various dimensions. For example, metrics can be searched starting with an impact category such as health, Then you can select a subcategory, and here, in this case, I selected access to quality healthcare. You can also select an SDG that you're interested in influencing. I selected gender equality. And then from that, a list of several indicators was developed. And the top 5 here, which were in alphabetical order, you can see here. The one is access to personal protective equipment, and then indicators about the caregivers employed, and then an indicator around child stunting prevalence. There's just a wealth of indicators. So it's this is a very valuable tool for the industry. Another thing that we see in IMM that I think may be different than what we often see in evaluation is a focus on impact valuation and impact verification. Impact valuation is the quantification in financial terms of a company's positive and negative externalities related to society and the environment. There are a few different methodologies used for valuation. These include social return on investment, which compares the value of social and environmental impacts to the original value of the investment, which you'll see this implemented by Social Value UK and their US affiliate. There's also the return on sustainability, which was developed by the Stern School of Business at NYU. This quantifies the costs and benefits associated with a corporation's SEG strategy. And there's also the impact weighted accounts method. This was a joint project of the Global Steering Group of Impact Investment and the Impact Management Project at Harvard. These are line items on a firm's financial statement. They translate a company's environmental, social, and employment footprints into monetary values. The framework allows for a direct comparison between financial profits and broader societal costs or benefits. It really treats impact as like a new profit metric. Now, impact verification, which we got a hint of under the 9 operating principles, is an assessment of an investor's impact management practices and reports against industry standards, such as the operating principles for impact management, the SDGs, and the principles for responsible investment. The purpose of verification is to build trust and confidence in the investment, the investor, and the investee, and really to build confidence in the fact that that impact has been achieved. Third-party firms certify the extent to which an organization complies with decision-making principles and standards for determining and managing their impact strategy, and the extent to which their impact reporting is reliable. There's several different firms involved. Examples include Bluemark, based in the US, and the Good Economy, based in the UK. A B impact assessment, or BIA, is a tool to assess a company's overall social and environmental performance. Companies that use the BIA can become recognized as a certified B corporation. We then have 2X Global. In this space, it's a membership organization with the aim to unlock gender-smart capital at scale. They work to align gender investing with existing standards and IRIS metrics. Global 2X provides the industry standard certification for gender lens investing based on the 2X criteria. Finally, we have the Cerise SPTF, which is a joint venture that developed the universal standards for social and environmental performance management. These standards help institutions benchmark their performance against meaningful comparisons. They were originally developed for the responsible inclusive finance space. So we've gotten now an overview of the industry, a very brief overview, and there are more organizations and more to it than that. But what's the role of evaluation in this space? We're coming to now maybe the most important question for TIG members. What is our role in measuring and managing social finance outcomes and impacts? And there's at least 4 avenues for evaluators to contribute to impact measurement measurement and management. These are, to apply evaluative and systems thinking, to engage stakeholders, identify material outcomes, support learning and decision making. And beyond that, evaluators, I think, have a role in the whole uh, investment cycle. We can be the bridge between investment and evidence at like all stages of the cycle. You know, since 2016, this TIG has advocated for using our evaluator hats or experience to help investors manage and optimize impact. And as I've shown in the diagram, we've got roles during design and strategy. We've got roles during measurement and data collection, during analysis and sense making, and reporting and learning. So there's no doubt a role for us in perhaps in third-party verification too, although it's not shown in this diagram. The primer provides links to sources that explore evaluation and impact management. And I have to make a note, I should have put a footnote on these before we go forward. I decided to experiment with using AI to develop graphics. And on the one hand, I found that they did really very nice graphics I couldn't do on my own, but they also don't understand cycles. And so the cycle is a little bit out of sync, and I apologize. I also learned that AI does not edit itself very easily. So once you get a graphic from them, it's easier to stick with it. And I'm happy to answer questions about that experience in the link in the discussion at the end. So before we get on to our discussion, I wanted to just review one other part of the primer that you might be interested in. And that is the question of how did we get here? And there's actually a long, the history of impact of social finance and impact investing is actually much longer than I had anticipated before we started when we started this research. Really, the roots go back to the 1970s and 80s to the South Africa divestiture movement, which is something that was active when I was in college. And this brought responsible investing to the forefront. Then in the 1990s, the first mutual fund screens began where people were looking for more responsible investments. In the 2000s to 2010s, we really saw the rise of impact investing. 2004, the European Venture Philanthropy Association was established. In 2007, Rockefeller Foundation coined the term impact investing. And in 2009, Rockefeller Foundation founded the GIN. From there, in 2013, EVPA developed their framework in Europe. But really, it was 2016, which was a watershed year for impact measurement. The Impact Measurement Project was founded. AEA worked with Social Value International to sponsor a conference called on impact convergence. They set an agenda for advancing the state of impact measurement. The Social Finance TIG was founded at that conference. So we'll be 10 years old this year, I suppose. Moving on, in 2018, the American Journal of Evaluation published the contributions from that 2016 conference, addressing key issues in evaluation and impact measurement related to impact investing. In 2019 and through 2021, the SDG Impact Initiative was very active, with UNDP trying to catalyze private sector investment towards SDG achievement. In 2022, foundations and impact investing came to the fore, with the Foundation Review publishing a special issue on the role of foundations in impact investing, signaling growing interest on the part of foundations in this space. So we sort of ended with the picture of 2022 towards 2023 in the primer. And in this last slide, I've I've had to rely on AI. I sort of asked AI what the sort of trends are, and this is what it came up with. So I wanted to go over this with you and see what you think about this. We can talk about this going forward. So, um, what's coming out that the latest trends are is that we're moving from bespoke reporting in the impact investing space towards more standardized expectations, stronger links to investment decision making and incentives, and more external scrutiny, regulatory and assurance. And particularly, we're seeing that in Europe, and probably less so in the US. Um, they say that regulatory sustainability disclosure is reshaping IMM data pipelines. Um, and some of the examples of this are sustainability disclosure standards. Um, I think those are in Europe. The EU CSRD, ESRS regime is driving broader a double materiality reporting and phased-in assurance requirements. Um, and these are quite technical, so I won't go into more detail about them. In the climate space, there's an expansion from climate into nature and biodiversity metrics. And I can personally say that you see interest among some of the big climate nonprofits into impact investing. Um, and since 2022, the conceptual and market distinction between impact investing and ESG integration has sharpened materially. And the divergence is now spanning objectives, regulatory treatment, product design, measurement frameworks, and capital allocation logic. And then technological integration. I mean, I think we're seeing this across all kinds of sectors, but AI and advanced data infrastructure have shifted IMM from largely manual, survey-driven, and compliance-oriented processes towards more continuous, predictive, and decision integrated systems. So the change is actually operational, not just philosophical. AI hasn't resolved the core issue around attribution problems, but it has materially altered how impact data is collected, validated, analyzed, and acted upon. So that means a changing role for evaluators or a change of the methods that will be used going forward. Also, a big change is a change from measurement to management, whereas so the center of gravity is now on the management side of IAM, and uh, it's shifted from measurement as reporting to management as a capital allocation discipline. So measurement remains essential, but it's increasingly treated as an input to decision making rather than an end product. So this is a big shift for us as evaluators too. And the shift is structural and visible across 5 areas, from KPI collection to investment decision architecture. So the managers are embedding impact criteria in advance. There's also ex-ante intentionality and contribution analysis. There's more emphasis on a clear theory of change, which is great. Identification of underserved beneficiaries and articulation of investor contribution. There's also a focus more on continuous monitoring rather than annual disclosure. I'm going to stop there, and we can move towards our discussion. One last note before we do that is I want to go over a few other things that are in the primer. This was, sorry, I took maybe longer than we should have, but we do have a discussion in the primer about comparing IMM to ESG and also corporate social responsibility. We also have a lot of additional resources, which of course are not yet up to date, but there's still a lot of material there. So going forward, I wanted to open it up for questions about the content. I don't know if there's any questions in the chat, and then move on to these other questions. I'd like to know from where you sit, what trends or hot topics in IMM are you seeing? What other topics would you like to learn more about? Is there anything that you would expect to see in the primer or you think could be in the primer that's not there now? I open the floor to the group. Oh, Tina, did you have a question? You're on mute.
I guess I was talking to myself. Yes. So I first wanted to say thank you very much for this presentation. I am new to this field, so definitely I found some of the vocabulary a bit challenging, but appreciated the overall presentation and introduction to this. But I have to laugh also because sort of as soon as I had plopped in when should I ask questions, you actually talked about what my main question was, which is could you give some examples of organizations that are working in this field? And you did, but I'm wondering maybe if you could expand on that a little bit more. Like you mentioned Rockefeller Foundation being very sort of an original player in this space. But I guess I'm trying to get a handle on like, would most kind of investment firms do they set aside a part of their portfolio to do this kind of work? If you could just expand a little bit more on kind of who the key players are here, I'd really appreciate that. Thank you.
I'm talking to myself too. I'm still learning myself too, and I'm not quite sure about investment companies. I think there may be some that are doing that, but there's certainly like a lot of foundations in this space. Rockefeller was just the beginning, and there's a lot of family foundations as well. You know, smaller philanthropies that are doing impact investing, and you'll see the major and USAID contractors and grantees are also getting into impact investing. I think Mercy Corps had an impact investing um, activity for quite a while. Well, also they had a very active microfinance program back in the day. I don't know if they still have ownership. ACDI VOCA had ownership of the financial institutions they set up, and then about I mean, almost 10 years ago, they set up an impact investing fund, but I think they made some agricultural investments in Ghana. So there's a lot of impact investing going on in the nonprofit sector, possibly the for-profit. I don't know about the for-profit contractors, if any are left. I mentioned the environmental NGOs. I don't know. I could also ask other people in the group if they have an answer to this. About other examples. I think there's many. It's a very complicated space. One place, if you really want to learn about this, is to subscribe to Impact Alpha. That's like a daily newsletter. It's a web space with daily news on, the investors, the investees, even who's who in the field, who's getting new jobs. It's also a job site. Most of the jobs lately have been for people to work on the investment side. Slavi, you have your hand up. Sorry, I can't always see everybody at once, so someone will have to, maybe people should just speak up a little bit.
Hi everyone, it's Lavi here from Catalyst. Good to see some old faces. Least nice to see you in person, and hopefully we can connect
Yes,
soon.
I just reminded me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah, it's been a while since I've joined these. It's been a busy year for me. So thank you for this presentation. Really interesting summary of the field and sort of our role in it. Um, just if I can maybe add a couple of things to the last question. I mean, family offices, big foundations would also be investing a lot in sort of impact investing, are good places to look at for some of this information. I was just going to share that in Canada, where I am, impact investing, social finance is still very nascent. So we're kind of in between. I'm currently evaluating federal government social finance fund, which was developed quite a few years ago, but $750 million to really help develop the ecosystem here, to invest in funds of funds, who then invest in social finance intermediaries, who then invest in social purpose organizations or NGOs and so on. it's a really interesting structure to look at here. We have a prime minister who is very interested in social finance, so we expect this will continue to be a field of development and growth. However, so our role in helping federal government sort of wrap their head around this, because it sits between the um, social and economic development agency within our federal government. Um, they feel that all of these frameworks and all of the structures, especially when we look at the European model where it's well developed, but it's very noisy, um, is is very challenging for them to wrap their heads around it. And most recent, so in Canada, we have developed something called Common Approach, which was intended to help social purpose organizations, NGOs applying for impact investing or social finance, to reduce burden on their reporting. And so a lot of conversation here is about where is the burden of reporting on impact? And when that burden sits with NGOs that were trying to encourage to apply, or smaller social purpose organizations that work with rural and remote communities that don't have a lot of capacity, it is interesting debate around, yes, we should have all of these things in place, and we're advising government about how they need to think about this. For them, really important principles of additionality and intentionality, because it's government that's investing and they want to know, would this be invested in anyway? But when it comes to how do we report on impact, it's a really interesting debate, because it seems to all of this seems to be pushed down on the organization that don't have a lot of capacity. And if we who have been in the field have a lot of challenges sort of wrapping our heads around all the frameworks and KPIs and things, it's a very challenging field for a lot of even intermediaries to cut through. So it is just a current debate I'm involved in, and just kind of wondering if anybody on the call has any thoughts about how do we make this a little bit more palatable and a little less burdensome before people start rejecting reporting on this. So that was a very long introduction to a question.
And I think some of the listeners who may be less familiar with the sector can understand how I really simplified the ecosystem in my diagram when you talk about, funding, funds of funds, et cetera, et cetera. It's a complicated ecosystem. And the question of the burden of reporting is super interesting. I did see a presentation at AEA a few years ago where the investor actually took it upon themselves to experiment with measuring impact. And they had to keep it very lean, but they did an interesting job and had some findings. But you often don't see investors wanting to take on that expense. Are there any other questions? Do we have any, that might be a topic to bring up in another primer, or maybe another, maybe something else. It's just a whole discussion, or maybe a paper around the burden of reporting. But is there anything else people would like to see in the primer? Should we update it? I mean, this is the open question. Should we update it this year, as it is a fast moving sector? So do we need to update it, or should we wait? And what would people like to see in it? Especially people we haven't heard from before, who might be new. All right, well, if there's any other comments, anyone else want to talk about something else in the minutes we have remaining?
Thanks, Liz, for such a great presentation that really helps to simplify what, as Flavia said, is a can be a complex field. I mean, I I do have one question that's just kind of as I'm someone who's like still learning about the social impact ecosystem and all of that. Um, uh, how does impact investing compare to something that would be like, for example, there's a company I know about that does, and you've probably heard of them, that do like fashion rental companies, which a goal
Yeah,
for those is that they're cutting down on clothing and fabric waste
yeah.
because you're just renting things. And the one I'm thinking of, I don't think they're listed publicly, but I imagine some of them are. Someone investing, buying stocks for a company like that, would that be social impact investing, or would it not be because the intentionality isn't there? They're just investing like in it like any other company.
I guess that's how they're placed in the market. I mean, but earlier on, impact investing would first happen when they're private, right? If they're looking for investment to grow, to scale up, maybe they started as a small operation out of somebody's home and they wanted to scale up to cover the country or a region, they would need capital, and they may have been able to attract impact investors who, maybe were willing to take that risk, because they're trying to achieve a social impact, or maybe they're willing to take a lower return, and it made it more attractive than going to the bank to get a loan. Um, so they could already be accepting, they could be a target of impact investing already. As a public company, that's a good question, and that's another area where I don't really know very much, and maybe that's something also we want to explore in our next round. But if you had if you were looking for mutual funds or stocks and you wanted to make a positive contribution, I mean, there's ways to find those sorts of investments, right? And so maybe they could be listed that way, but I don't know about that, so I'm just guessing. Yeah, it's a good
Okay.
question. My niece is I have a niece who's now 16, and she's very aware of environmental issues, and she will only buy like secondhand clothes. I mean, and it's so interesting. I don't know if a lot of other young people are like that, but she's on this kick. And, she also won't
It
use
is.
AI for the same reason. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Right. No, it is. I mean, I hear a lot more about the fashion stuff, possibly because my sister works in that field, but like you'll hear about like brands like Shein, and like once someone says there is advertising they're wearing Shein, it's like to certain crowds, it's like, whoa, 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 you need to think about your decision.
Wow.
That's a bit of a similar, I guess it's some outgrowth of this whole kind of
Yeah.
concept.
No, there's probably impact investing happening in a sector so we haven't even thought about, because there
Hmm.
are things like that. There's, people also working on the food waste problem, right? And there's probably firms that are that are getting investment that for that outcome. Um, you know, that's, I think, one of the probably related to one of the SDGs as well. Anyway, I
Right.
don't want to hold you all. It's sort of lunchtime here, so if I'll let you guys, you've only got 3 minutes, so I'll let you all go early. Thanks for coming. It was great to see everybody, and I look forward to seeing you at the next event.
Yes. Thanks a lot, Liz. Thank you,
Thank
Thank
everyone, for
you.
you.
joining.
This is
Bye.
great.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.